Today, it's Christmas Sunday, the Sunday before Christmas. And as we prepare to celebrate this week, it's just true that the Christmas season heightens our sense of expectation for what we want out of the Christmas holiday, what we want from our family time, what we want from friendships, what we want our lives to be. And the truth is, it's not just about Christmas, it's about life. It's just that our ideals for life get heightened, get ratcheted up during the Christmas season, and our hopes and dreams just get taken to the next level, and we're reminded of all the things that we really want out of life. And then Christmas actually comes, and we're reminded, many of us, that all the things that we have these ideals about, they're not quite fulfilled. Our expectations are not quite fulfilled. Now, if you have a wonderful, perfect, Hallmark Christmas movie kind of Christmas, then great. Consider yourself blessed. But I realized over the years, it's actually a minority of people who feel that way about the holidays. And so what usually happens is we have all these expectations, and it's going to be like a Norman Rockwell painting. And all the families together in one place, and there are lots of gifts under the tree, and everything's perfect, and there's a fire glowing in the fireplace, which can be a problem if it's 80 degrees, in Phoenix, but I don't think it will be this year. But we have this idealized picture, and then what happens is, one of the dishes doesn't come out quite right, and then a kid complains about something, and then there's an argument, and then something happens, and then just the reality of life comes back after all of these heightened expectations for the Christmas season. And so even with all the expectations of Christmas, people still get divorced. We don't get the opportunities that we wished we would get. We didn't get the promotion we hoped for. Or you look back over your life and you thought you'd be in a different place in life than you're at right now. Or your health is not as good as you hoped it would be. Or we lose people we love. Two of our members here at One Church have lost their fathers in the past 3 weeks. So you lose people you love, and you grieve during the holidays. Reality is almost always less than perfect. Can we say amen to that? And so if you're like me, no matter how great things are, even if things are really good, you always want more. That's just a part of me. Like, I always want more. I always want things to be better than they really are. I just had a funny experience this past week. Last week, one of the Chandler council members asked if I would lead the invocation before the Chandler City Council meeting. And I was honored to do that. It was the first time I'd ever been asked. And you kind of have this feeling like it's almost legitimizing. So like One Church is going to be in front of the Chandler City Council now, and they'll introduce the pastor of One Church. And so it's going to kind of put us on the map, at the City Council. And I just kind of felt good about that. It was an honor. But I felt, kind of not just honored for me, but honored for you as well. And so I went there, and then I came home, and then I saw my friend Rabbi Shmuley's Facebook feed, and he's been here a couple times. Most of you know Shmuley. And here was the picture on his Facebook. There he is with Joe Biden. So, and then he's got a profile picture with President Obama as well. And so I was at the Chandler City Council meeting. Shmuley was at the White House. And so I'm like, you win again, Shmuley. Like, no matter how good things can be, I always want more. And I'm reminded, oh man, he's experiencing life on a different level. So it was just one of those experiences for me. So the holidays, after all these heightened expectations, they can be a letdown. When the reality of life, no matter how great life is, when the reality of life is compared to those ideals. And at the same time, we can also have expectations for the people around us. Our friends, our family members, that somehow they would be perfect. And of course, we would never use that word, that we expect them to be perfect, because that sounds ridiculous, but that actually is how we expect them to behave most of the time. We want the people around us to act the way we want them to act. We want them to be the people we want them to play their little part in this perfect Christmas and this perfect life. But when that doesn't happen, that reality comes in as well. And then some of us also expect ourselves to be perfect. Some of us are perfectionists, and you're your own worst critic, and you're harder on yourself than you would be on anybody else. And maybe it is about the holidays, and you want to cook the perfect meal, or whatever it is, you have this ideal of perfection for yourself in life, or maybe you live like that in general, and you're the kind of person who always wants more, and you're this high achiever, and it just seems like you and your circumstances are never good enough. And Christmas can bring that back as well. So the Christmas story that we're going to read today presents a very realistic, messy, less than perfect situation. But we're going to see how, even though it's not perfect, goodness can come out of our experience of Christmas. The first Christmas family could have given into disappointment. They could have felt lost. They could have blamed each other. They could have let each other down. They could have given into grief and disappointment for the situation they were in. But something else happened instead. And so let's read together. It's the familiar Christmas story, Luke chapter 1, verses 26 through 38. You can follow along on the screen. In the 6th month of Elizabeth's pregnancy, God sent the angel Gabriel to Nazareth, a town in Galilee, to a virgin pledged to be married to a man named Joseph, a descendant of David. The virgin's name was Mary. The angel went to her and said, "Greetings, you who are highly favored. The Lord is with you." Mary was greatly troubled at his words and wondered what kind of greeting this might be. But the angel said to her, "Do not be afraid, Mary. You have found favor with God. You will conceive and give birth to a son, and you are to call him Jesus. He will be great and will be called the Son of the Most High. The Lord God will give him the throne of his father David." David is the greatest king in Israel's history. "And he will reign over Jacob's descendants forever. His kingdom will never end." "How will this be?" Mary asked the angel, "since I am a virgin?" The angel answered, "The Holy Spirit will come upon you, and the power of the Most High will overshadow you. So the Holy One to be born will be called the Son of God. Even Elizabeth, your relative, is going to have a child in her old age, and she who is said to be unable to conceive is in her 6th month, for no word from God will ever fail." "I am the Lord's servant," Mary answered. "May your word to me be fulfilled." Then the angel left her. So in our culture, we have a way of sanitizing Bible stories. We take stories that were very gritty and grungy and raw in their original form in the Bible, and then we turn them into pretty pictures. Norman Rockwell paintings, or just, kids' toys. So you take something like Noah and the Ark, where almost everybody in the world is drowned in a flood from Genesis, and then we make like a kid's playset out of it. You know what I mean? And it just doesn't quite honor the real messiness of the story. And the same thing is true with the life of Jesus. And really, the life of Jesus is often literally whitewashed. In our Western culture, we often depict Jesus as like a Swedish model in a bathrobe. We have this way of reading our own view of life and our own aspirations, ideals, on what we think is ideal, onto Jesus. So I love this Facebook meme I've seen recently. Jesus is talking to his disciples. He says, "So there I was, the only white guy in Jerusalem." It's so true. We tend to sanitize, whitewash these stories. So when we hear the account of the virgin birth, of course, in our post-Enlightenment, scientifically, skeptical-minded culture, we think, did it really happen? Isn't that our question? Did a virgin have a child? That's where our mind goes. That's not where the original hearers' minds went when they heard or read the Christmas story. This is in the Roman Empire. This is Greco-Roman culture. Greco-Roman meaning it was the Roman Empire, and the Romans loved Greek culture, so it's Greco-Roman. And they really expected a great person who changed the world to have a miraculous origin story. If Jesus did not have a miraculous conception story, the original hearers of this would have been like, "Well, that's lame. Can't you come up with something better than that? He's this great person, but he doesn't have a miraculous origin story." And so when they heard about the birth of Jesus, a lot of the original hearers would have said, "Oh, kind of like Hercules." Because Hercules is the offspring of the god Zeus and a mortal queen named Alcmene. And so they would have thought, "Oh, cool, kind of like Hercules." But Luke would have said, or Matthew would have said, "Well, not quite like Hercules. It's actually a little bit different than that." What would have shocked the original hearers of this Christmas story is not that there was a virgin birth, but it would have been that Mary was a humble girl from the wrong side of the tracks in a poor town, and that there was no earthly reason for her to be highly favored and blessed the way that she is here in this story. In the Hercules myth, Zeus tricks Queen Alcmene into having a relationship with him. He deceives her. The god deceives the mortal. And in this story, the god honors, blesses the mortal. There's no deception here. There's no taking advantage of here. And so this story would have communicated different things about who God is, and God's expectations on human beings, on what makes a good Christmas. You know, the Greco-Romans would have had certain ideals about how, this mother would have been a perfect person as they define it. But that's not how God defined it. God had a different definition of perfect. So in this book, Christmas is Not Your Birthday, written by Mike Slaughter that we've been referencing in this series, he writes, our Christmas traditions have sanitized the Jesus birth narrative by removing the event from its biblical and historical context. Jesus was born in a stable, a cave where animals were kept. And where there are animals, there is also dung, which in turn brings flies. The setting of Jesus' birth was not sanitary, and it doesn't get better from there. Jesus spent his earliest years as a refugee in Africa, escaping the genocide that Herod was committing in Judea against children aged 2 and under. And that's the real setting. It kind of reminds you of real life right now, doesn't it? The real setting of Jesus' birth. So one of the things we can take away as we struggle with the reality of Christmas versus our ideals is that Christmas and life will never be perfect, but it can be good. It'll never be perfect, but it can be good. The first Christmas was far from perfect. And so when all of our ideals are projected onto this one day, we're set up for a letdown. But nobody ever promised that Christmas and life would be perfect, that all of our ideals would be attained. It's not true of the first Christmas, and it's not true of Christmases now. And we can find this idea in the very first chapter of the Bible, in Genesis chapter 1, way back in the creation story, where it says God created the world in 6 days. And we talked about this many times. We say here, questions and doubts, welcome, because we don't read Genesis as a science book. We read it for, it's an ancient reflection about life and what it means to be human and who God is and what this life is all about, how we get along with each other. And after God creates on each day, there's this phrase repeated, and God saw that it was good. It doesn't say, and God saw that it was perfect. You're right with me. Nice. You're ahead on that one. It says, and God saw that it was good. Not perfect. There's another Hebrew word for perfect. The word perfect is not used. The word good is used. It's tov, the word tov. If you have Jewish friends who say mazel tov, it means good luck. The word tov means good, and God saw that it was tov. God saw that it was good, not perfect, but good. And in Hebrew, the idea of tov is that not only is it a word for good, but it's a word for good enough, that things work as they should, and that there are good possibilities because of that. So in the Genesis creation account, you have the creation being tohu vabohu in Hebrew, or formless and void in the Bible, or wild and waste. It's like this wasteland, this mass of chaos. And God encounters this, and he orders it day by day by day, and creates a new order of this chaos, and then calls that tov, good. But not just that, God rests on the seventh day, and then he blesses all of us, and he says, keep creating. So the idea of tov is that it's not done. Once again, it's not perfect, it's not reached its pinnacle, but now we're going to keep creating. God has given us the dignity to keep creating and making the world better and better and better, or gooder and gooder, tover and tover. And so God didn't say that it was perfect. He saw that it was tov. Can you identify with that when you look at your ideals for Christmas and life and you look at the reality of life? Does it sometimes feel like there's some chaos? Like some things in your life are tohu vabohu, formless and void, wild and waste, and they just don't quite make sense. Sometimes you try to make sense of things, but they just don't quite make sense. And that can keep you up at night. There's a little sense of chaos there. And maybe most of your life is great. Let's not over-dramatize it. Maybe you're a very blessed person and most things are going well for you. But in the back of your mind, there is something that's just kind of bothering you. And there's a sense of chaos there, and it brings up those feelings of disappointment when the ideal is not met. The creation story is actually a pattern for the way that we're supposed to see God working in all of life. That what God does is he encounters that chaos and he brings something tov out of it. Not perfect, but something good. There's a process of bringing order out of that chaos that you feel that keeps things from being ideal. So it's not just like flipping a switch and all of a sudden, boom, it's perfect. No. There's a process from tove to even more tove, and more tove, and then more tove, and it's possibility-oriented. You can look back and you can see things have gotten a little better in that area, or I've grown in that area, and I can look forward, and I can say, you know what, I'm headed in a good direction in this particular area of my life. It's not perfect, but I'm headed in a good direction. So if circumstances are not perfect, you can still see the tove in them, that there's a process of coming out of chaos, and you're headed towards an even better place. Secondly, some of us expect ourselves to be perfect. And we place these ideals on ourselves for how we're going to behave and the kind of people we're going to be and what we're going to do, and not just in Christmas, but in all of life. And a lot of times, frankly, those of us who do this are oblivious to it. It drives the people around us nuts, but we don't see it the way that they do. But there's always this sense of drive, like this sense of inner anxiety that I've got to be better and better and better at this particular thing. And that will eat away at you if you haven't realized that yet. Over time, it will just create this sense of anxiety that just kind of builds and builds and builds and builds, and you're just never able to enjoy the successes, even when they come. Because you're always thinking, oh, it could be more, it could be more, it could be more. And maybe you deal with this sense of perfectionism, that things are just never good enough, even within you. So my son turned 5 this past week. Can't believe how big he's getting and how fast they grow up. And so I was looking back through some old pictures and videos. And there's a video we have of our son trying to play basketball when he was 2. It's at the basketball court at our development. And he had this little ball, he's just a tiny little guy, and he's trying to shoot the ball, and the hoop looks just like it's up in the stratosphere. It looks so much higher than he is. So I have a video, and there might be sound, there might not be, there doesn't need to be. But so you can just watch him dribble along here. Oh, there he goes. It's a good attempt. He doesn't give up, he just picks up the ball again. He's like, oh, too close. He backs up a little bit. He tries and tries and tries. It just doesn't quite go, does it? Now, imagine the just bizarre scenario. Let's say some dad, say I wasn't his dad, somebody else, or some coach or something, sees a 2-year-old trying to make a basket, and he starts yelling at the kid. Starts berating the kid. What's wrong with you? Shoot the ball harder. Can't you see the ball's falling short? What's your problem? Get it together, kid, right? And starts yelling at this child for not being able to make a basket at 2 years old. It's so absurd you can't take it seriously. If that were really happening, wouldn't you call the cops? I mean, it would just be so abusive and ludicrous and disgusting, gross. You would get angry. You would rush to protect that child from these just bizarre, abusive expectations that this 2-year-old is going to hit a shot. The reason that he can't make a basket at 2 years old is because of human limitation. He's limited by his height as a 2-year-old and his strength as a 2-year-old human being. And we realize that, and that's why it would be so absurd if we berated a kid, a 2-year-old, for not making a basket. I would suggest that if you are afflicted with this perfectionism, as I sometimes am, it's every bit as ludicrous to expect yourself to attain these high ideals that you have for yourself. And it's good to have, it's good. Moves you forward, makes you a better person. But they can also get so ridiculous that it's like you're a 2-year-old trying to make a basket and you're berating yourself for not doing it. And it's a graceless experience of life, where it's all performance and it's all or nothing, and you either get A+ or you're a failure in your mind. And again, it doesn't have to be your work, it could be your family, it could be who you are morally, and you're always just kind of, you always feel like you're worthless morally. It could be holiday festivities, it could be anything. Maybe there's just this idea that you picked up somewhere, that you're just not good enough for some reason, you're not attaining this perfect ideal for some reason. It's just always kind of there, deep down inside. Loved ones can see that in you. And perhaps it's every bit as ridiculous as trying to expect a 2-year-old to make a basket. But you see, here's what's going to happen. He's already twice the height, practically, that he was then. And he's just going to keep on shooting up and up and up and up and up. And sometime, I would imagine right around the time he's 16 or 17, he's probably going to get to be taller than his dad. And then pretty soon, the ball's going to start falling in a lot. And over time, he's going to find out that he makes the basket a lot more than he misses. Why is that? Because like life, this is a growth process. And if you're the kind of person who always has these ideals, these aspirations of perfection, well, I don't know that you're ever going to reach perfection, not in this life at least, but you are going to grow if you're the kind of person who wants to grow. And we say around here at One Church, excuse me, our second value is no perfect people allowed. And we say you don't have to pretend to be perfect because you're growing. You don't have to continually berate yourself like you're a 2-year-old trying to make a basket because you're not attaining to these ideals, whether it's Christmas or not. But you can just accept, okay, I don't have to be perfect because I'm growing. I'm making progress. Like a child grows up, I'm growing as a person. One of the most common definitions of sin is in the Bible, to sin, is to miss the mark. It was an old archery term. And the person would shoot an arrow, and if it fell short of the target, that's the literal definition of sin. This means it needs to fall short of the target. So in basketball, if a basketball player shoots the ball and it falls short of the rim, what does the crowd start chanting? Air ball, air ball. Sin is an air ball. And air balls in the human life are normal. John Calvin, one of the greatest theologians in Christian history, says we sin every day in thought, word, and deed, even if you don't want to, even if you try not to. And this doesn't mean you don't have ideals. It doesn't mean that you don't have goals and that you try to follow Christ and you try to do the right thing. It doesn't mean that. So you do those things. It just means you're not going to be perfect. And that's the gap that a lot of Christians fall into. They're trying to be a better person, but realizing they're not going to be perfect in this life. There are going to be air balls. But in Christian theology, growth is called sanctification. It's a $1 million theological word that just means growth. To be sanctified is to be set apart for God's use. And it's a process increasingly over time. It's where you grow as a person, you become a better person. John Wesley, the founder of the Methodist Church, defined sanctification as the love of God being shed abroad in your heart. That over time, you and I can become more loving people. And that's the goal. Now, notice, it doesn't mean over time, I'll make more money. Or over time, I'll have a perfect Christmas holiday. Or whatever. Over time, I'll be able to do this, perform in this way. And that will be defined as perfection. That's the ideal. God's ideal is different. Over time, I'll be able to love more and more and more. That's what sanctification means. That's what growth means. That's what the goal is, the rim is for God. And so, as you look back over the past year, think about last Christmas. Have you grown to be a little bit more loving in the past year? Do you love a little bit more? Do you love the people around you a little bit more? Do you love yourself a little bit more? Do you love God a little bit more? Do you love goodness a little bit more? If so, that's reason to celebrate. That's reason to celebrate. Oh, there's this rim, 10 feet up in the air, this ideal, and maybe you're still far away from that, but is the ball going a little bit higher? Are you loving a little bit more? If so, you have something to celebrate this Christmas. You can celebrate the growth in your life and maybe give up on perfectionism, being a perfectionist, and maybe you can be a goodist, a tovist. That, the rim's up there, but good things are happening. I'm getting tover and tover over time. And then finally, imperfection is an opportunity to reframe and give grace. So, circumstances are not perfect, and I'm not perfect. And it turns out that the people around me are just like me, and they're not perfect either. And so it's an opportunity to reframe and give grace. Grace means giving something better than they deserve. Grace means I'm offended, I'm let down, I'm hurt, but I'm going to choose to respond in a way that gives this person something better than what I think they deserve. Now, if that were easy to do, then it wouldn't be grace. Grace is hard. Grace is a challenge. It's as hard for me as it is for you. And so we have this particular expectation for the people around us, these ideals, this sense of perfection that we want them to attain as well. But of course, they don't meet that, just like we don't. And we can be disappointed. Now, in counseling, if you're willing to look at it a different way, that's called reframing. Just kind of putting a different frame around the picture. This is how I look at it now. I'm disappointed. This person's not acting the way I wish they were. I wish things were better. I have expectations for them they're not fulfilling. Okay, I see that view. Now, what if we could reframe that? Put a different frame around it. See it in a different way. And it's a choice. It means I choose to see a different perspective of this person. So I saw this pic, and I thought it was a perfect example of reframing. You're probably not going to be able to read the words here. This is a notebook that somebody has kept. It's in the next slide, a notebook that somebody's kept. And on the left side of the notebook, it's like a list of 10 things, and on the left side are things that this person would be tempted to complain about. So number one is early wake-ups, like having to wake up too early in the morning. So on the left side, you go down, and these are things that the person could complain about. But on the right side, she writes an equal sign, and then she writes another way of viewing that circumstance or those people, and a way of reframing and looking at it differently. So number one is early wake-ups, and then she writes equals children to love. You see what she's doing there? I have to wake up really early in the morning, but you know what? That means I have children to love who wake up really early, and I have to wake up for them. Number two, I have a house to clean. Equals, I have a safe place to live. See what she's doing? That's a reframe. I have this one view of things, and I could be disappointed, but I'm willing to look at that differently. Number three, I have laundry to do. Equals, I have clothes to wear. Not everybody in the world has good clothes to wear. Number four, dishes to wash. Equals, I have food to eat. Being thankful. It's a reframe. 5, there are crumbs under the table. Equals family time. And there's a heart next to it. Family time equals food falling under the table. 6, grocery shopping. I have grocery shopping to do. Well, that equals I have money to provide for our needs. That's a reframe. Choosing to see a different view. Number 7, have toilets to clean. Equals I have indoor plumbing. I love that one. That's reaching a little bit, but it's good. 8, lots of noise equals people in my life, right? Ways of viewing things. 9, endless questions about homework equals my kids' brains are growing. It's a reframe. 10, I'm sore and tired in bed equals I'm still alive, still kicking. That's a great example of a reframe. Even when other people don't live up to our expectations. Oh, this is hard, isn't it? Hard to do. But when other people don't live up to our expectations, we can either express disappointment and just berate the 2-year-old for not making the basket, or we could choose to reframe, to look at it differently, whether it's this Christmas or whether it's every day in all of life, and to see in those things that we could complain about something to actually be thankful for, to give grace to those people. So, are you holding something against somebody this Christmas? Is there somebody in your life that's just not living up to your expectations? And the Christmas holiday just might be another example of that. Are there things that you wish were different? Is it an opportunity to reframe and give grace, even if you think that person doesn't quite deserve it? That's what grace is, actually. Giving somebody better than you think they deserve. Is there an opportunity this Christmas and in life to reframe and to give grace? Mike Slaughter, again, writes, God's love and favor on us doesn't mean that the path of faith is going to be neat and predictable. Life gets messy. But in the midst of your mess, God shows up. No matter what you're struggling to overcome, no matter what life issues have come your way, God promises to show up. Christmas is God's vivid reminder that amid the uncertainty, God shows up to bring peace, purpose, joy, and wholeness. And so even if circumstances are not perfect, are they tov? Are they good? Can we see the good in them? Even if we're not perfect, can we go from being perfectionists to being goodists and realize I don't have to pretend to be perfect. I don't have to be disappointed because I'm not perfect, because I'm growing. And when people around us are not perfect, is it an opportunity to reframe and to give them grace? And perhaps this Christmas won't be a perfect Christmas, but perhaps it can be a good Christmas.